Observatory will consider issuing the number 8 gale or storm signal at around midnight. A one-day operational pause for the US Navy after the second collision in 2 months involving its ships. And Spanish police shoot dead the fugitive Barcelona van attack driver.
Good evening. The strong wind signal number 3 is in force as Typhoon Hato is moving closer to Hong Kong. The observatory will consider issuing the number 8 gale or storm signal around midnight. Rachel Leung has more details.
Calm before the storm. At 8:40 this morning, the Hong Kong Observatory issued the standby signal number 1 as Hato edged within 800 kilometers of the territory. Almost 10 hours later, at 6:20 p.m., the strong wind signal number 3 went into force. Sunny skies earlier during the day became overcast and there were showers in parts of Hong Kong. The storm is expected to skirt within 100 kilometers of the city tomorrow.
At 4 p.m., Hato was centered at about 440 kilometers east-southeast of Hong Kong and is forecast to move west-northwest at about 25 kilometers per hour towards the coast of Guangdong. According to the present forecast track, Hato will be closest to Hong Kong tomorrow morning, skirting within around 100 kilometers south of the territory, posing a considerable threat to Hong Kong.
Whether or not a higher signal will be issued will depend on the direction of the typhoon's movement, the forecaster said. For the observatory to issue the number 10 signal, sustained wind speeds need to hit more than 117 kilometers per hour, with gusts exceeding 220 kilometers per hour. Meanwhile, airlines are not taking any chances. Cathay Pacific, Cathay Dragon and Hong Kong Airlines have cancelled most of their flights to and from Hong Kong tomorrow. China Airlines announced that at least 9 flights between Hong Kong and Taiwan have been cancelled. Passengers are advised to check its website for the latest flight information. Ferry operator Fortune Ferry has also suspended its services to and from Tai O ahead of the arrival of the storm. Members of the public are advised to take all precautions against strong winds and flooding as early as possible. Rachel Leung, TVB News.
Meanwhile, the city sweltered under record temperatures today, with the mercury hitting a high of 36.6 degrees Celsius at the Hong Kong Observatory. The observatory says it hasn't been that hot since records began in 1885. The approaching storm can also be blamed for today's air pollution levels reaching the very high health risk category.
The mercury soared past 38 degrees Celsius in parts of Kowloon and the New Territories this afternoon. A temperature of 38 degrees was recorded in areas including Ta Koo Ling, Sha Tin, Cheung Kwan O, Sham Shui Po and Wong Tai Sin, while it was a sweltering 39 degrees at Yuen Long Wetland Park.
Afternoon temperatures over most parts of the New Territories rose to 37 degrees or even above. And the Hong Kong Observatory even registered a record high of 36.6 degrees. And it is a record high since records began in 1885, and that is more than 130 years or so.
The approaching storm was also behind today's bad air. The Environmental Protection Department said many air quality monitoring stations showed higher than normal pollution levels, with the Air Quality Health Index reaching 8 or above, corresponding to the very high health risk category. The reason for those high readings? Because light winds can't disperse the air pollutants. But we can expect an improvement once the storm moves to the South China coast, as it will bring heavy showers with it.
In other news, activist Joshua Wong was back at court today for contempt of court related to the 2014 Occupy movement. This case involves 19 other activists. Here's Elmi Leung on what lawyers said in their final submissions at court.
Joshua Wong returned to the dock 5 days after he was given 6 months in jail for unlawful assembly, this time for a separate case related to the Occupy movement in 2014. The student leader, together with League of Social Democrats Vice Chairman Raphael Wong, are among 20 protesters charged with contempt of court. They allegedly disobeyed an injunction order to disperse the crowd at a Mongkok protest site. Prosecutors argued that amplifiers were used to announce the injunction order, yet protesters refused to leave and deliberately obstructed the clearance operation. They questioned if their motive was to attract publicity. Defense lawyers asked the court to assess evidence in its totality. For example, one of the respondents, Chiu Chi-shum, was moving towards the Chim Sha Tsui direction as instructed by police, but was arrested with 10 meters left to the road's end. So was it a case that defendants wanted to leave but couldn't, or whether merely being in Mongkok could be construed as obstruction? Outside the court, student leader Lester Shum, who earlier pleaded guilty, said he's prepared for jail time.
I am now facing it with a very relaxing and relieving mood. Many of our friends, including Raphael Wong from LSD, has been facing these charges, these several charges, with a very determined attitude. I think the attitude gives Hong Kong people, including me, a lot of courage to deal with the upcoming challenges in Hong Kong.
As the storm approaches Hong Kong, the judge gave directions that the hearing may be adjourned if the number 8 signal is issued and remains in force tomorrow morning. Elmi Long, TVB News.
Well, the jailing of the 16 political activists continues to stir debate. Acting Chief Executive Matthew Cheung today asked the public to move on from the issue, and a former chairman of the Bar Association said it's not up to the activists to negotiate their punishment terms. Caleb Long has that story.
16 activists were slapped with jail sentences last week after the government demanded a review of their original sentences. Before today's Executive Council meeting, Acting Chief Executive Matthew Cheung stressed that those who exercise their civil rights must understand there are limitations to their freedoms. He also said that it's time for the society to move on.
Views are divided on recent events. We're all aware of it. But I think we should look ahead. And in fact, the present administration adopts an open and tolerant approach. We are really very empathetic to public aspirations. So we really want to build bridges, enhance understanding with the community.
Former Bar Association Chairman Paul Sheh also commented on the sentence reviews during a radio talk show this morning. Sheh said the civil disobedience participants were never promised a certain kind of punishment or that their punishments would be light. He added this is not something the activists can negotiate. Throughout history, no civil disobedience participants would deliberate with others on their jail terms. Sheh also noted that the public can disagree with the court's judgments, but there is no need to make a big fuss and pronounce the death of the rule of law in Hong Kong. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Turning overseas, the commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet says a number of bodies have been found on USS John McCain. 10 sailors went missing when the destroyer collided with an oil tanker early Monday in waters near Singapore. The second major collision involving a U.S. warship in 2 months tore a gaping hole in the ship's hull and flooded several adjacent compartments. 5 other sailors were injured. A search and rescue operation is continuing. The U.S. Navy's top commander ordered a 1-day operational pause to allow time to identify any immediate steps that need to be taken to ensure safety. A broader review will look at the 7th Fleet's performance. There was no immediate explanation for the collision in one of the world's busiest shipping regions. After an extensive review, U.S. President Donald Trump has recommitted America to the 16-year-old war in Afghanistan. In a reversal from his past calls for a speedy exit, Trump laid out the new Afghanistan strategy and declared the military must fight to win what so far has been an unwinnable war. James Aitken reports.
Trump used a primetime television address from a military base to unveil a stepped-up military campaign against Taliban insurgents who've gained ground against U.S.-backed Afghan government forces.
From now on, victory will have a clear definition: attacking our enemies, obliterating ISIS, crushing al-Qaeda, preventing the Taliban from taking over Afghanistan, and stopping mass terror attacks against America before they emerge.
Trump offered few specifics but promised the U.S. would shift away from a time-based approach to a more regional strategy by linking Washington's assistance to results and cooperation from the Afghan government, Pakistan, and others.
Ultimately, it is up to the people of Afghanistan to take ownership of their future, to govern their society, and to achieve an everlasting peace. We are not nation building again. We are killing terrorists.
Trump also vowed to get tough on Pakistan, accusing it of offering safe haven for militant groups. That prompted the Afghan ambassador to the U.S. to rate the speech a 10 out of 10. But analysts warn that isolating Islamabad as the only culprit could increase the influence of regional players like Russia, China, and even Iran.
This is not only the Pakistan. They have to be look at the role of the regional forces in Afghanistan. So this is a bit more complex situation is going on in Afghanistan. Comparing the simplistic view is adopted by the U.S. current administration.
In Beijing, the foreign ministry praised Pakistan, a longtime China ally, for its efforts in fighting militants and said the international community should recognize this. The Pentagon has recommended sending nearly 4,000 new troops, supplementing the total of 8,400 in Afghanistan now. The Taliban condemned Trump's announcement and vowed to make Afghanistan the 21st century graveyard for the American empire. James Aiken, TVB News.
The 4 remaining suspects in a terror cell accused of carrying out last week's attacks in and around Barcelona appeared in court today. Yesterday, the last fugitive from the cell was shot dead near Barcelona after he flashed what turned out to be a fake explosives belt at 2 troopers who confronted him.
4 alleged members of a terror cell accused of killing 15 people in last week's attacks in Barcelona and the nearby town of Cambrils appeared in court today. The 4 were arrested for their alleged involvement in the planning or execution of the atrocities last Thursday. Today, they testified before a national court judge in Madrid. The hearing in the Spanish capital comes a day after the last missing member of the cell was gunned down by police near Barcelona.
Just before 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the Catalan police has shot dead Yunus Abu Yaqub, driver of the van and direct perpetrator of the attack in Barcelona on Thursday.
The lone fugitive was shot to death on Monday after he flashed what turned out to be a fake explosives belt at 2 troopers who confronted him in a vineyard not far from the city. Police said they had scientific evidence that Abu Yaqub drove the van that ploughed into crowds on Barcelona's Las Ramblas Boulevard, killing 13 people, and then hijacked a car and fatally stabbed its driver while making his getaway. After 4 days on the run, Abu Yaqub was spotted outside a train station west of Barcelona on Monday afternoon. According to police, 2 officers found him hiding in a nearby vineyard and asked for his ID. Police said the 22-year-old Moroccan was shot to death when he opened his shirt to reveal what looked like explosives. A bomb disposal robot was dispatched to examine him before police determined the explosives belt wasn't real. A bag full of knives was also found with his body. Abu Yaqub's brother and friends made up the rest of the 12-man extremist cell, along with Imam, who was one of the 2 people killed in what police said was a botched bomb-making operation.
Firefighters in Italy have freed a 7-month-old baby from the rubble of a house where he had been trapped with his family following a 4.0 magnitude quake on the resort island of Ischia. At least 2 people were killed in the quake, which struck around 9 p.m. local time. Another 39 were injured. Search and rescue teams with sniffer dogs were dispatched to the popular island. Extra ferries have been put on to evacuate people to the mainland and evacuate those affected by the quake on the packed holiday destination.
Still ahead in the news. Hundreds of people say they've fallen victim to a fraudster.
And a warm welcome back to TVB News. Around 300 protesters rallied outside the police headquarters in Wan Chai today, calling for an investigation into an alleged medicine scam that duped them out of some $80 million. The protesters said a 62-year-old man in To Kwa Wan, claiming to be a so-called living Buddha, had promised them medicine that could cure tumours. Most of those who fell for his scam are on the mainland, but there are some victims from Hong Kong and Taiwan. DAB lawmaker An Chiang, who is helping them, says around 600 people have been conned by the man, with one elderly woman on the mainland handing over at least 2 million yuan.
Some of them maybe by selling them the some drugs and saying the drugs can cure the cancer or cure all. Well, they can just mention how good is the drug, how good is the medicines. But however, the people has paid a lot of high price and end up finding out the medicine is just nothing, maybe just some vitamin or something.
Chief Executive Carrie Lam has appointed one more Undersecretary and 2 political assistants to her administration. Jack Chan will start work as Undersecretary for Home Affairs tomorrow. The 56-year-old Chan has been Deputy Director of Home Affairs since February 2011. Also starting work tomorrow is Jeff See, the political assistant to the Secretary for Education. He was the previous Education Chief's political assistant from November 2012 to June this year. And DAB member Siu Kai-yi has been appointed as the Chief Secretary for Administration's political assistant. She'll assume her post on September the 1st. Well, traffic on the Lantau link resumed normal this morning after the airport-bound traffic almost came to a halt yesterday. A total of 8 toll booths were in service for the airport-bound traffic this morning, 2 more than yesterday morning. A line of vehicles appeared at one of the auto toll booths at around 8 a.m, but the queue quickly dissipated. Traffic flows from Yuen Long to Tai Lam Tunnel, Tin Kau Bridge and Sing Ma Bridge were smooth at around 8 a.m. Right, smooth sports news I'm getting, Tony.
Kicking off football and the Rooney Renaissance.
Oh.
In the English Premier League, Manchester City and Everton played to a 1-1 draw. Wayne Rooney scored the opener in the first half at the Etihad Stadium. It was his 200th Premier League goal. In July, the 31-year-old returned to the Toffees after 13 seasons at Manchester United. Raheem Sterling scored late to salvage a point for Man City. Both teams finished the match with 10 men. They have 4 points each after the first 2 games of the new campaign. In cycling, Britain's Chris Froome has the overall lead after 3 stages of Spain's La Vuelta. The champion in Paris is attempting to win 2 of the 3 races of the Grand Tour. Here's James Sawang.
Stage 3 was a 158-kilometer trek from southern France to Andorra. Along the way, an introduction to the Pyrenees. 8 riders staged an early break before they were caught with less than 30 kilometers to go. Tour de France winner Chris Froome in the thick of it. He was among the front runners. 2010 champion Vincenzo Nibali of Italy made his move with 350 meters to the finish line. He took the stage in a time of 4 hours, 1 minute and 22 seconds. Spain's David de la Cruz was second, followed by Froome. Last month's yellow jersey owner took over the red jersey as the overall leader. The 32-year-old British cyclist is bidding to become only the 3rd rider in history to complete the Tour Vuelta double in the same year. Still 18 stages to go. Jameson Wong, TVB News.
On to some badminton now, and China's Lin Dan beat Kieran Merrilies of Scotland to advance to the 2nd round of the World Championships in Glasgow. The scores in the match were 21-5 and 21-10. Super Dan is gunning for a 6th world title. The 33-year-old could potentially meet his longtime rival Lee Chong-wei of Malaysia in the final. Other winners on the day included top seed Son Wan-ho of Korea and Hong Kong's very own Vincent Wong.
Finally tonight, millions of Americans gazed in wonder at the extraordinary sight of a total solar eclipse, one that raced across the continent from Oregon to South Carolina. It was the first coast-to-coast solar eclipse to span the North American continent in 99 years. Jeff Tang reports.
Unless you're a centurion, this is most certainly a once-in-a-lifetime event for the rest of us. After weeks of anticipation, millions of onlookers from the northwest U.S. state of Oregon to the southeastern state of South Carolina gazed in wonder as the moon reduced the sun to a silvery ring of light. It took 90 minutes for the shadow of the moon to travel across the 4,200-kilometer long by 113-kilometer wide zone, transforming the narrow band of the country from day to night for 2 minutes at a time. Some 12 million people live in the path of totality, where the total eclipse will appear, with millions more traveling to spots along the route to bask in its fully dark glory. The last time a coast-to-coast total solar eclipse happened in the US was back in June 1918, when the world was a much different place. World War I was still raging on, and the Treaty of Versailles that would end the great conflict was still more than a year away from being signed. But war was probably the furthest thing from this couple's agenda, as they signed their nuptials for a totally unique wedding.
Michael, you may kiss your bride.
These lovebirds showed that you don't need to outdo your friends with bigger and more lavish banquets to have a memorable wedding. This young lady in Chicago had the birthday gift of a lifetime.
I don't think many people get to say that they had a total eclipse on their birthday, so I feel pretty special because of it.
Tens of thousands of feet up in the air, these lucky passengers on a commercial flight got to witness the eclipse closer than any of us earthbound humans. Even US President Donald Trump took a break from his tweeting duties to catch a glimpse of the rare cosmic event with his family at the southern facade of the White House. But he briefly looked up without protective glasses, which drew a friendly reminder. Not everybody enjoyed the event, though. At this zoo in Nashville, Tennessee, flamingos flapped their wings in panic, while giraffes ran amok as the eclipse messed with their daily routines. By all accounts, it was the most observed and most photographed eclipse in history, including those watching on television and online. Jeff Tang, TVB News.
A wondrous sight indeed.
Indeed, very wondrous.
Yeah, indeed. Brings us to the end of our news, so thank you for watching.
Have a very good night. Stay safe in the storm.
Bye-bye.